Hey everyone, Sean here, and today what I want to talk to you about is selecting software for your firm, especially if that software and or the software company is relatively new. Now, I listened to a podcast episode recently I thought was really insightful from Cloud Accounting, and that episode talked about trust in technology in the accounting industry, firms that are determining whether or not they want to purchase new software. And one of the things they talked about was the longer sales cycles for software firms selling into firms in the accounting industry, that being somewhere between 1 to 2 years, typically minimum, as these firms are evaluating whether or not they want to purchase that software in particular. And probably, at least primarily, one of the reasons for this longer sales cycle is because firms want to make sure that that software company is going to be around for the next few years. They don't want to switch to a new software system and then all of a sudden it no longer be available. That kind of defeats the purpose of them trying to make those upgrades because they're going to have to do that process all over again. No firm wants to do that. So instead, what I want to talk about is what your firm can start to consider in terms of determining whether or not the timing is right based on any firm that's selling software, particularly in your industry, and when it might be the right time for you to decide whether or not to incorporate that into your firm's technology stack. Now, the question in particular that I would encourage you to ask these firms is primarily how they're funding operations. If you're unfamiliar with how most software companies grow, they typically raise VC money or venture capital, which means they need to go to investors in order to fund operations for the foreseeable future. Now, most of these firms, what their goal is to try to achieve profitability sooner rather than later. And if they're able to do that, that adds a significant amount of stability to what it is the company is trying to do. Because once they're no longer dependent on necessarily outside funding, that means that their operation is stabilized to an extent. And as such, they can kind of continue operations just based on how they are generating revenue the time being because they've grown well enough or they have a healthy business model. If that's not currently where a software company is, then that might give you at least some pause or mean that you need to dive a little bit deeper in determining whether or not it's too soon for you at your firm in order to basically switch to that new technology or purchase that new software. And another thing that I would keep a close eye on is on the so-called quote unquote rocket ship software companies that are growing very quickly. These companies that are growing very quickly, they make a lot of noise. There's a lot of buzz around them, but there's also oftentimes more risk associated with that as well too. There could be consolidation. Those companies can get scooped up, and whether or not the service continues is really dependent upon the company that purchases them. But instead, what I'd really be looking for more often than not is kind of slow, steady growth. Really, the kind of stability that you're looking for in a software firm that has the right kind of philosophy and is really trying to become profitable and then sustainable with happy investors as quickly as they can be. So that's where I dive a little bit deeper at your firm if you are trying to figure out kind of when is the right time to purchase new software. I want to thank you for engaging with my content. I hope that you found it valuable. And if you at your firm would like to learn more about how to boost profitability without needing to hire, I'd encourage you to sign up for my free 5-day email course called Bottleneck Buster. You can sign up for that course at bottleneckbuster.com.